Okay, here we are in week 7. We're going to talk about two subjects that are related that kind of serve as a counterpoint or an addition to this week's readings and videos. They also go with some of the things we learned in week 5 and in week 3 when we talked about systems. So this is kind of a nice way to I guess, cap the course, relate to the final project a little bit, and tie some loose ends together. First subject is project management. Project management, you guys are probably well familiar with, and in fact, I'm sure that some of you have been to project management seminars. I don't know. Some of you may be project managers. Uh, in any case, we all have elements of the project management role in almost any job we do. We just don't look at it in maybe as a tightly a defined way. We have projects and project managers. I'm not going to read these slides to you. You can pause and look at them if you care to. They're pretty easy to take in. The project manager, though, is the person responsible for supervising the systems from initiation to conclusion. Those systems are all those things that go into the project. So scoping, planning, staffing, organizing, and controlling these things are key. The process management is the activity of documenting, managing, and continually improving. So, as I say, these things extend from the broadest, fullest sense of the word, such as managing the introduction of a new model of something, including the initial concept, to various gates or stages or phases. It depends on the company you're in, all the way to the introduction to the marketplace. Measuring project success is pretty much what you would expect. Was the project on time? Was it on budget or within budget, as they like to say? Uh, did the development of the project have a minimal impact on ongoing operations? In other words, typically firms or organizations think of their projects as on a kind of a separate system than their ongoing operations. So introducing a new project in a division that's been making 3 projects or 3 products, introducing a 4th should not mess with the functions required for product 1, product 2, and product 3. Oversimplification, but that's probably the best way to look at that. Some causes of project failure. Failure to establish upper management commitment to the project, lack of organization's commitment to the methodology, shortcuts, poor expectations management. In other words, are people's anticipated results or anticipated outcomes either oversold or did you underdeliver? Feature creep and scope creep. Scope is pretty much the full nature of what's happening within the project. Big list of competencies here. Hopefully we all have some of those depending on what we do. As I say, a project can be an entirely individual thing. So I know we don't think of our next upcoming homework assignment for this degree program as requiring project management competency, but it really does. Again, I'll let you pause if you want to linger on any of these, but these are typically the things that go with project management functions. One of the most noted kind of methodologies or paradigms is the notion of program evaluation review techniques, the PERT chart. Many companies, especially companies that develop and introduce products or take on components of larger products for other companies. Use this or some variants of it. The Gantt chart is a bar chart used to kind of depict tasks, overlapping tasks against a calendar, which is usually spread out over a year or two. So here's the PERT chart. And the PERT chart, as you'll notice in the top corner, shows scope definition, analysis, problem analysis, requirements analysis, and then as you see, as the chart kind of moves now left to right, logical design. Sometimes we go into a decision analysis process. Ultimately, we get to physical design, construction and testing, and implementation and delivery. A lot of time, as I say, a lot of times companies build gates or phase systems around these things. Here's the Gantt chart, and as you see, it kind of lays the same stuff out. We notice that there is overlap. There almost always has to be overlap. Different groups, different external organizations, suppliers, vendors, have to be involved with a number of these things too. And they're involved in these gates. And so the project management function watches after these things. I've sometimes been involved from a marketing communication standpoint, advertising or promotion, or maybe it's writing training materials with newly introduced projects. And sometimes the project teams would include not just us, but basic industrial designers that were coming up with the boxes and the systems and the software for the project. And so we'd all meet in teams over a period of maybe I want to say 18 months, even 24 months, as some of these rolled out. I didn't like that part too much because it seemed like a lot of extra meeting time. I didn't necessarily, my area would have been more at the commercialization end of things, which would come to the end. And I didn't really enjoy kind of the requirements analysis for chips. That was something I didn't know that I needed to be involved with, but I was in some cases, or at least I sat in the meetings and occupied space. Here's another look at the life cycle: initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling. Project management has a lot of chart graphic stuff. Depending on the industry or the field or the company you are in, this will look different. There'll be extra circles in some cases. There'll be branches. You know how it goes. So, project management activities. A statement of work is something, this is particularly common in when you're bidding out things. You will give a statement of work to your vendors. It can also occur internally. Scope statement, project definition, overview, understanding. There's probably going to be documentation relating to engineering, patent, other legal considerations. So I'll let you look at that a little more. It's a nice, tight way to view project management activities. Scope. Again, the boundaries of the project, what it entails, the areas of a business that a project may or may not address. So you hear the word scope, depending on what business you're in, thrown around, particularly if you touch on project management in any way. Governments won't let out any kind of project until scope is fully nailed down, let's put it that way. Identifying tasks, milestones, I mentioned gates, phases, and things like that. These are usually tied to this concept of milestones. Estimate of task durations, that's always, that's one of the biggest challenge is the the ability to combine known durations with unknown durations, because projects sometimes uh, embody things that aren't covered or that a firm doesn't have any experience with, that the vendors might not have any experience with. Remember, and I know a lot of you guys are affiliated with Corning. Uh, the iPhone was about a year late in coming to market, primarily because of the glass of the screen. And then that involved, uh, meeting the folks at Corning by Steve Jobs and others on that team. And so that was a gate, that was a milestone that was slowed down because of the glass problem. I don't know if you guys have read any of the books on Steve Jobs, but he was walking around with test and prototype models, and he noticed that his car keys were scratching the screen. Uh, it involves resources, obviously, project management does. Here they are, starting with people. And the most important things are at the beginning and the end: people and money. So there you go. Again, other causes of project failure relate to premature commitment to a fixed budget. In other words, there's a lot of things that aren't discovered or that aren't known. There's the known and the unknown, and the known unknown, so to speak. Over optimism, inadequate management, failure to adapt, all these things. Key hints for project leadership: consistency, support. Again, getting back to the notion of promises or expectation management. The morale aspects we see here: praise and criticism. Uh, be aware of danger points. It takes experience in any area to really start to have a complete handle on some of these things. Set perceivable targets. Explain and show rather than do. Obviously, you want to build the competency of those in your organization. Don't just rely on reports. And again, back to morale, team spirit. Next thing we're going to talk about, second phase of this brief, hopefully, video, uh, is the systems development life cycle. It's similar in a lot of ways to what we were saying about project management, but it involves more of an emphasis on software. Term is also used to refer more broadly to information systems projects as well. It's a standard process designed to conduct all the steps necessary to analyze, design, implement, and maintain. And there are two basic categories. There's SDLC, which is what we're broadly talking about, and some alternative methodologies, which I'll cover one toward the end here. Here's the basic process, and it's not unlike some of the things we were looking at under project management: planning and selection, analysis, design, and implementation and operation. And as you see, it's circular, meaning that since it's a system, it should be somewhat self-sustaining, except in some circumstances. And that's why it keeps going, theoretically. Systems planning and selection is basically the first phase. Obviously, it comes from requests to deal with problems or to create something to take advantage of an opportunity. We might want to perform additional tasks or come up with something that improves the overall operation of something or capitalizes on a weakness that a competitor has. Point two in this is investigating a purpose and a baseline plan. I'll let you guys read those on your own. Phase two is system analysis. What are users going to do with the current system or the current software package? What are they doing currently? What do we hope to have them do? Or what do we want to add in terms of functionality? Think of if any of you guys have had online banking services for any period of time, think of the way those either their websites or the apps have developed over the years. These were all, I guess, it's just one way of saying how, or demonstrating how something has a given level of functionality and convenience for the end user, and ultimately things get added to it. So that's, I guess, one example, but you can apply this thousands of different places. The systems design involves logical functional design, physical design, and then turning all that over to programmers, outsourced resources, other resources that might not have anything to do specifically with the technology, but might have more to do with the implementation of the technology when it's done. And then implementation and operation, coding, testing, documentation, hardware and software installation, user training. This is done at all levels, from consumer products for cameras or scanners, all the way up to large scale things dealing with, well, we talked a couple weeks ago about server farms, right? So here it is again, and as it says, all the phases, like in project management, are not necessarily sequential. Each phase has a specific outcome and deliverable, and individual companies use a customized life cycle. In other words, this looks different depending on the organization you're in, or even the category of organization you're in, what type of business you are. The main alternative methodology is prototyping, building a scaled down working version of a system, a prototype. Users are involved in the design, captures requirements in concrete form. Prototyping method is kind of shown here. Identification of a problem, creation of a prototype, and this again can look a lot of different ways. Implement and use the prototype. This is actually a fairly common way of looking at the development of a system or a software or a group of technologies that form a larger system. Common sense, really, when you think about it. But you see that thing on the right-hand side, new requirements. The change has always come about as a result of new requirements. Do we want to add functionality? Do we want to change functionality? Do we want to modify things to deal with, we talked about a week or two ago about cyber threats and security. That's usually a key driver. That's why when you think about why do we go from iPhone system 12.1 to 12.2 to 12.3, whatever it is, are usually things, they sometimes add functionality, or they work to accommodate changes in other apps, but they also deal with threats that are constantly and ongoing. So don't forget about threats and the security discussions we had a week or so ago in readings. Other alternative methodologies, joint application design, where users and managers and analysts work together, rapid application development. These kind of employ some of the other things like joint application design and prototype. Participatory design. It's something where users get involved more in terms of I don't want to liken it to focus grouping, but it's a little more hands-on in terms of the actual users have to come and work through the different ways things get used. This generally, in my mind, happens in more totally new solutions and concepts and products, really, the participatory part of it. And then agile methodologies. We can obviously bring in computer-assisted software engineering tools. These are basically tools employed by analysts to develop new information systems. And these relate to things like diagramming analysis, code, and that sort of thing. What really happens is there's no straight line way to basically do SDLC. It's usually a combination of all the things we just talked about. Anyway, so thanks a lot, and look ahead.